Nous allons aller à la dernière séquence et donc avoir un panel qui va nous permettre de nous amener à l'heure du déjeuner. Et je voudrais inviter à mes côtés les trois panélistes. Je vais commencer par Elizabeth Kelleher Dwyer, who is coming from the US, Director of the Rhode Island Department of Business Regulation. Thank you for joining me on the stage. José Galamba de Oliveira, Chairman of the Portuguese Insurers Association. And Mr. Angus Scorgie, head of... Did I pronounce it? Really? Oh, wonderful. I'm so happy. Head of Prudential Regulation and International Affairs Insurance Europe. Thank you, all of you, for joining me. Yes, you can give them a big applause because it is the end of the morning and we need some energy. Thank you anyway for joining us, and thank you for bringing your knowledge. We're going to have, as you know, we're in over time, but it's worth to have this conversation with you and really appreciate your time and getting some insights from you. Maybe start with you, my closest neighbor in Portugal, José, because we are only 1 hour flights from the two cities, from Casablanca to Lisbon. Yeah, it works normally.
It works.
Okay, we're going for in this panel to try together to see how insurers, how you in your industry, you can innovate and expand your services and coverage in different situations to address the emerging needs. Since we started this morning, we are trying to explore what could be the opportunities and how to address these so diverse opportunities. We know that we live in a society that has grown more prosperous overall. People and property seem at the same time still being really vulnerable, suggesting an increase in protection gaps. And my first question is, what are your views on this, and how is the situation in Portugal?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for having the opportunity to share some thoughts about our industry in Portugal, here in Morocco. It's always good to be back here. As you said, we are neighbors. In fact, one a curiosity, Rabat is the capital closest to Lisbon. It's not Madrid. People think it's Madrid. It's not. It's actually Rabat. So we are really neighbors. Talking about this, I mean, the challenge that we face in our country are not different than ones Mirencio mentioned in Spain and also in developing countries. I'll probably focus on two of those challenges. The first one is the demography, or as we call it, adverse demography, because we're getting older and we have the fertility rates have dropped dramatically in our country as well. So we have an issue in there, and the protection gaps are actually increasing. First, on the pension side, we have a national health system that is is going to be very stressed in the near future. There is an aging report from the European Commission saying that between 2045 and 2050, the substitution rate, that means the first pension against comparing with the last salary, is probably going to be half. And so for a lot of people, this is going to be a huge challenge if they don't do something. And also because we are getting older, we are seeing more chronic disease and things like the health conditions are deteriorating. It puts a lot of pressure again in the national health system, and so we can only expect that costs are higher. Starting on first talking about the health side, the health insurance line of business has been the fastest growing in our country over the past decade. It's right now number 2 in the portfolio for insurance companies. Exactly because the people were looking for an opportunity to go to the private sector, private hospitality, to complement the access that they have to the public one, because the public one is already very difficult to book an appointment, surgeries are with waiting lists and so on. So, and so there is a huge growth on this business, but when you look forward in 10 years or 20 years, there's going to be an issue because the costs of health for these people which are getting older are also going to increase. We have a business model built on annuities, which means that when you get older, the price starts to shoot up. And so what we're doing right now, there are two things. One of things is redefining the business model, and so we probably have to capitalize part of the premium on the earlier years when you contract, so that you have a provision that you can use, and so you don't face higher increase in the future. There is a model already seen in some other European countries, but we don't have in Portugal. But we're also looking at hybrid products. Hybrid means combining, in our perspective, combining life, health, insurance coverages, so that you can, if you buy one of these products, when later on life you have the need to long-term care, you can use part of the capital of the life to finance that too. So it's still on the drawing board. It's not on the market, but there is a lot of studies done by a lot of companies on that. And on pensions, very quickly, because we know that we are pressed on time. On pensions, we have a new government which has put on their program to put pressure on people buying Pillar 2 products. That means savings by companies and employees, and on Pillar 3. What we have been fighting is that you need, I think it was already mentioned here by some of the speakers before, if you want people to save long-term for your retirement, you need to give them an incentive, because otherwise they're not going to change consumption for saving long-term. And that's something that we've been fighting a lot, and apparently there is an opportunity to have that in Portugal in the near future. So we are hopeful on that too in the coming years.
Thank you. This was also mentioned by our keynote speaker this morning.
You're right. You're right.
About the fiscal incentives. If you want people to save more money for the future, and particularly in this period.
Yeah.
I was mentioning that we are close to each other, and when we suffer from drought here, you suffer from drought and lack of water also in your country and Iberia globally. This brings me to think about what you call in your industry the NatCat, natural catastrophes and natural disasters. When it comes to this NatCat protection and following the recent extreme storms that touched and devastated your country, are people and authorities more aware of the need to increase the protection?
Yeah, unfortunately, you need to have an event like that to make people the political,
to raise awareness.
To raise awareness and the need that we have to do something different than what we have done in the past. The protection, it's huge in terms of the housing and small and medium-sized businesses. In terms of housing, only 50% of the houses in Portugal have some sort of insurance. But those who have insurance are very much concentrated on bigger urban areas like Lisbon, Porto, and so on. So if you look at smaller cities and rural areas, the number of houses with insurance is probably about 1 into 20%. So very, very low. So we need to change that, and we have seen with events that we had these a few weeks ago with Christine and that chain of storms. There were like 250,000 houses affected, and the majority of them did not have any type of insurance. And so finally, with that is in the political agenda, and I think that it's an opportunity in Portugal to develop a pool involving the shared responsibility between insurers, reinsurers, the state, to give accessible products and to increment the base, the possibility of people to buy insurance. Obviously, we need to have solutions for the low-income people. That's an issue.
Yes.
But so a solidarity pillar in that model, it's absolutely essential. But it's something that is right now happening. We are right now having discussions with the government to develop that.
Thank you very much, José. I will come back to you with maybe one more question later on. I want to go to you, Beth, and thank you for joining us here from the other side of the continent, the Atlantic Ocean, on the other continent, west. I just want to mention that you are representing a regulator, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, I'm the commissioner in Rhode Island, which is one
in
state.
Rhode Island, yes. And my first question is about the initiatives regulators are undertaking in the U.S. to assist in facilitating emerging needs, because we heard a lot of kind of needs, and how are you working on that in the U.S.?
So, it is amazing listening to everyone how common the needs are internationally. We have a lot of the same issues. I thought I would just focus, though, on property. I think a number of people have heard availability and affordability of property insurance in the U.S., especially with the California wildfires, Florida hurricanes. So we're definitely experiencing that. But one of the things that we found is we're not experiencing it everywhere. And so for those of you who don't know how the U.S. is set up, we have 56 different state jurisdictions. We individually regulate our jurisdiction, but then we work together through the National Association of Insurance Commissioners.
Okay.
And most of our states, or a lot of our states now, are looking at data to find out exactly where those protection gaps are. So my state is on the Atlantic Ocean, and we're subject to hurricanes, but we're not finding that everybody is having an availability issue, but some of the coastal properties are. I know that in California, the places that are more prone to fire are having more availability problems. So we're really doing a very deep dive into the data. We have a data call out nationally to all the property insurers to really get some real understanding of where the protection gaps are in property insurance. And then what do we do about that? So a number of states, I think it'll eventually be most states, are looking at resilience. So you have a piece of property, you can insure it, but you're going to insure it for a high amount, and maybe the insurer doesn't want to take you on because your risk is too high. So there's a program started in Alabama about 20 years ago, and really has shown some great progress. There's a report out of the University of Alabama showing the resilience of homes that were upgraded to what's called the Insurance Business and Home Safety Standard roof in Hurricane Sally, and it's really incredible. I mean, those homes made it through the hurricane with much less damage. They're resistant to damage. So that's where we want to go with, people need to understand what their risk is and how they can address that risk, both for lower premiums and to just overall lower the risk to all of our communities. So a lot of our states are moving down that road. At the same time, we're finding out more about where the actual risk is so that we can address it very discreetly.
You were mentioning in this last idea the capacity or the ability to innovate, to mitigate that kind of risk. This can come from the whole value chain, maybe from insurers, but mainly from people that are building houses or industries or whatever. This is the case you were mentioning about this place in New Orleans, particularly. As we are talking about these innovations, as we can imagine that you have or are several innovations in the U.S. within the insurance industry, and that are developed, proposed. How are they coming to the market? How are they brought to people? With what kind of pedagogy? Are there any kind of channels that can help people understand better, or maybe help insurers to meet the market needs directly?
Yeah, so the way the U.S. is set up is actually works very well for innovative products. My state is only about 1.1 million people, and we had a national insurer come to us and say, we have an innovative motor product that we want to try out. We don't want to really release it into the United States. We'd like to see how 1 million people would react to this program. It's a pilot, essentially. And so they did that pilot and made adjustments as necessary, and they're now putting it out to the rest of the states. A lot of states are acting that way as incubators for discrete products that the insurer can come to us, talk to the regulator, understand what changes, if any, they need. A lot of times they don't need any. I'm surprised sometimes people come and say, oh, I know that laws will bar me, but they really won't. We can work with that. But it allows the companies to test a product before releasing it nationwide and now being in a situation where you've taken on a lot of risks. So a lot of states are doing that type of innovation and in different areas. So my state, we tend to have mostly property and casualty companies. I know there's other states out there that are really life companies that are innovating in the life area. So there's all sorts of innovative products going on across the states that I think will eventually come out to the international markets.
Does it help to reduce the regulatory burden for insurers?
Yeah, so another thing about the regulatory burden, a lot of times I think it might be overstated. It just depends. I mean, from a solvency perspective, where that is not an area that anyone's going to go down, right? I have had people come and say, well, it would be better if we didn't have to have. Insurers have to be solvent. The products have to, have the appropriate reserves. But as far as creations, we've amended a number of our laws to, take into account technology. We have a bulletin on artificial intelligence that really says to the insurers, yes, you can use these technologies, but in a smart way.
Yes.
So if you're using like an AI algorithm or something, make sure there's a human in the loop. Make sure you understand what's happening with your customer and how that AI is being used, and then go ahead and use it. There's no requirement and there's no law that tells you can't. So I think for innovators, I think the best way of approaching this is to approach a regulator.
Yeah,
they usually want to help.
Yeah, we try to learn from each other in all the contexts in several countries, part of the world. And as you know, here we have the Moroccan Federation of Insurers and Insurance, and also the ACAPS, which is the regulator in Morocco. And this morning, they all presented the way that we need to innovate. At the same time, the regulatory has to play the role that the regulatory has to do. And I have a last question for you. Are there any kind of bottlenecks situations for the product approval in case of innovation in the US? Because it's a process, and maybe sometimes it can be it's real burden for insurers. But at the same time, you have to do the job from both sides. So, are there kind of bottlenecks, and how do you work in the US to solve that kind of situation?
So I hope that most states have kind of reduced those bottlenecks down to very low. Again, though, if you have a new product, my best suggestion is come to the regulator first. Explain, we have a system, a national system called SURF, where you make rate filings in multiple states. But if you just file a rate filing on a brand new product that the regulator's not going to understand, I think that's going to slow down the whole process. So we usually ask people, come to us, explain what you're trying to do, and it'll make the whole flow faster. These days, I think regulators really want insurance companies to innovate and bring new products that are better for consumers to the market. Maybe years ago, there was more of a wait, but I think in most states, you're going to find a pretty fast approval if you explain the product and get the understanding of why there's benefits.
Thank you very much. I'm going to you, Angus, to have also your opinion about your experience and expertise about these topics. Maybe start by asking you very briefly, what is your organization?
So, well, first of all, can I just say thank you very much for the invitation to the FMA to come and speak with you today. It's really a pleasure to be with you in Casablanca. So my name is Angus Scorgie. I represent Insurance Europe. We are the European Federation of Insurance Associations. So we represent the interests of all the insurers, the majority of the insurers.
Okay, we already had some representative from the organization here in this event a couple of years ago.
Exactly.
But I have my naive question just for the attendants, maybe do not know. Let's talk about the regulations, and particularly what I was mentioning with the previous speaker, which is about regulatory barriers and opportunities for European insurers. because everybody wants to innovate.
Yeah.
We have heard from the keynote speakers, and particularly from the Spanish one this morning, how innovation is important to be more inclusive, for example, to people. Even in Europe, there is a lot to do. What can you share with us about this topic if people and insurers want to expand services?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, first of all, let me start by saying that Europe's, very well regulated, the insurance sector, and very well supervised, and rightly so. I mean, as we talked this morning, the importance of trust in the financial system and making sure that we honour the promises we give to our clients and customers is very central to the business and the fundamental. So in Europe, as most of you will know, most of our rule book has been developed following the financial crisis. That was really the trigger for a lot of the regulatory developments that have happened over the last 15 years. And some of the rules that we have developed, are very successful. I mean, I think, as Insurance Europe, we always support Solvency II. It's really been updated. That's our prudential regulation system. It brought a real risk-based capital system to Europe, across the whole of Europe. It really upgraded our risk management and our governance, and I think, very welcome, especially the new revisions to the rule book there. So that's a really good example of good rulemaking, I think. And then if I look at the international level, we talk about the IIS, and some of the members here are all a part of that international community. And at the IIS, they developed over the last 10 to 15 years the holistic framework for systemic risks. So another example where industry supervisors all work together to develop something that really works and is valuable, I think, for everyone. But alongside all the good things, I think this intense period of policy making in Europe over the past 15 years has left us with quite a lot of excessive regulation. What we see is, we use a statistic that we developed a few years ago, that in 2012, I think we had, say, 12 regulations that were directly applicable to the insurers. And if we roll forward to now, it's more like 60 or 70 regulations. So really a five-fold increase in the number of regulations that the insurance companies are having to deal with. And now, they're not all Solvency II size, it has to be said, but it is it does create burden, it does create compliance and reporting requirements. But it's not only the number of files. What we also see is increasing complexity of the files, lots more details. We see overlaps between the files because it's difficult to manage all the stakeholders and make everything work together. And I think that's really why we have been very supportive of the recent initiatives in Europe to simplify some of the regulation. The European Commission has really been making a good effort to try and bring some rationalization to reporting requirements, to some of the regulatory requirements that we have. And our initial assessment is that things are, that there are some green shoots, shall we say. We start to see there's an awareness amongst the policymakers that this period of policy making cannot continue. It's a bit counterproductive to some extent now. We start to see some of the excessive requirements being rolled back, which I think we very much welcome. But at the same time, we do think that there's a lot more that could be done. We're very supportive of continuing to look at some of the regulations, particularly those that are incoming, to see if we can make them a bit more proportionate. And then beyond the regulations themselves, I think we're looking at some of the other ideas that are going around. One I would mention is that, in the UK, they very successfully implemented a growth and competitiveness mandate for the supervisor there, the Prudential Regulation Authority. And we think that's a good avenue to explore. It might not work in Europe, but maybe it would, and maybe it would help sort of alleviate and provide a counterbalance to some of these regulations. So, yeah, our message is very much, good effort so far, but much more can be done, and we're willing to help and contribute where we can.
As you heard, and was mentioned by Beth, in Rhode Island, she got an example about insurers using AI. I want to talk with you about the digital transformation and the use of AI. I will be very happy to hear from you.
Yeah.
What European insurers use that? How do they use that? How are they responding to this new use? I'd be happy to hear from you and then from José about this topic.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. It's very clear that digitization is affecting insurers quite fundamentally, and we see it right across the value chain, from product design and underwriting to distribution, claims management, and investments. This is driven by rapid technological change. I'm sure everyone's using AI to some extent now. But I think there's also the other side of it is the evolving customer expectations. So, consumers are expecting a bit more from us in terms of seamless user-friendly digital services. So that's also driving a little bit of the change, we think. But in Europe, so the digitalization agenda is also unfolding alongside, quite an ambitious policy agenda from the Commission. And it's, based on good things: innovation, competitiveness, resilience, and a growing emphasis on digital sovereignty. So I think it's a good direction. I mean, I think the challenge for us is really to try and harness these new technologies while ensuring, strong consumer protection, financial stability, and making sure that everything works in a sort of coherent and usable regulatory framework. So that's where we are. I mean, I think, I won't say too much more given the time we have. I mean, I think AI, really there's an opportunity here to deploy AI across a bit of scale. Obviously, insurers are already embedding it in some of their processes. But to realize the potential of AI at scale, we think AI regulation really needs to be clear and coherent. We see a little bit of overlaps. We see some Solvency II overlaps, for example, that we think are unhelpful. So making sure everything's clear and coherent is one of our kind of key requests with AI. And then just very quickly on data, all this AI digitization requires very good data foundations.
Yes.
And insurers are increasingly investing more and more in this. And what we need here, again, is just more clear and coherent rules and really good guidance from the Commission on what's acceptable, what's not acceptable, and where do we need human intervention, etc.
So investing a lot massively in using data and AI, but investing a lot massively, but also responsibly in the European spirit.
Yep.
José, what can you tell us about the importance of using AI in driving innovation in the insurance industry from your point of view?
Yeah, we see a lot of innovation coming out of insurance companies from insurtechs. And one of the interesting things is that in the insurance, insurtechs are not seen as competitors, are actually seen as people with a lot of innovation, who can bring a lot into innovation into the legacy or the older providers.
So they're part of the value chain.
They're part of the value chain. So they tend to incorporate them in the value chain as a way to speed up innovation in their internal process. And so that's happening today in Portugal. AI is also growing. Almost all the insurance are doing either pilots, and some of them are actually using them at scale, especially in claims management. In fact, we're going to see AI in all parts of the value chain, especially in underwriting. For instance, the pilots show a huge potential of doing a very speedy process with reducing dramatically the cost of underwriting, and as well as working with very good accuracy and good quality of processes and data, if you have them, obviously. And one last point about AI, I think it's somehow it was already mentioned, is that idea of using it responsibly. Ethics here, it's in the center stage. I mean, you must be very careful how you use the data that you possess.
Yes.
You're using all these tools.
Yes, and it's a major topic in your industry because
it is.
It's led by trust.
Exactly.
And it's really important to keep that control. So I have one last question for you, Angus, if we can address that question briefly. It's about the ways that insurers are helping to close the global protection gaps and what more needs to be done in the future, very close future.
Okay, well, given it's between me and lunch, I will keep my comments very briefly.
It's hard.
So a lot has been said this morning on protection gaps already. As Insurance Europe, we're a member of, alongside the Moroccan Insurance Federation, we're a member of something called GIFIA, the Global Federation of Insurance Associations. And through GIFIA, we do a lot of work on protection gaps. We had a very intense report in 2023, which started the work. And then more recently, we've built on some other work from international organizations to prepare a report called Pathways to Protection. And in this report, we build on this framework called the 4 A's, so accessibility, affordability, availability, and awareness. And for each of those, we deep dive into the issues and solutions, and then we try to showcase what industry is doing. So we have some very great examples around financial literacy, around how the product development within the Brazilian favelas have been helped to bring the local economy up and provide protection for low-income households. We also have some great examples from Japan. So I really just want to say, please encourage you to read the GIFIA report, and it's a really good resource for looking at what the industry is contributing. But on protection gaps, the numbers are staggering. The percentages are very low or very big, depending on which side you're looking at. And our message at Jiffy very much is that we are very happy to contribute, but we cannot do it alone. And it really has to be a concerted effort with policymakers, governments, etc. I think, as we already heard this morning. So,
thank you all for your insights and bringing your knowledge and experience. Thank you very much, Beth Dwyer. Thank you very much, José Galamba de Oliveira. And thank you, Angus Scorgie, for being with us here in the Rendezvous de Casablanca de l'Assurance. And I wish you all the best in your several and different countries. Mesdames, Messieurs, je voudrais vous remercier de votre présence et vous souhaite un excellent appétit. Nous allons aller vers le déjeuner. Je vous prie d'applaudir l'ensemble de nos intervenants qui ont fait un effort extraordinaire pour apporter leur compréhension et leur expertise à cette grande rencontre. Bon appétit.